The national lockdown caused this fundamental shift in consumer car shopping behavior. We noticed two driving forces that influenced this innovation curve I'm about to tell you about. Those two driving forces were a macroeconomic driving force and a shift in the consumer mindset. Today, I'm going to try and answer the question, what do businesses need to do to keep up with digital transformation? But I suppose there's one thing we can all agree on, and that it's been mobility unusual. One thing I believed in the past, and maybe I still believe, is that one can predict the future, or maybe even plan for it if you can't predict it. Perhaps before 2020, we all would have bought into that theory. But then COVID-19 hit. The global pandemic hit us hard, and the uncertainty of the future meant that big companies closed down. Companies like Edcon, Comair, many print publications shut their doors. And this is testament to the fact that the future is certainly uncertain. So now, as we stand here, what do we do as an industry to drive faster digital transformation? But before I take you through the answer to that question, let me tell you a little bit about the innovation curve. We were taught this during lockdown, and the national lockdown caused this fundamental shift in consumer car shopping behavior. We noticed two driving forces that influenced this innovation curve I'm about to tell you about. Those two driving forces were a macroeconomic driving force and a shift in the consumer mindset. So let's very quickly turn to something that is the macroeconomic driving force, which we globally can't really do much about in our little businesses. And before lockdown, we were looking at about a 5% decline in the retail market. And then on the 5th of March, South Africa recorded its first ever COVID case. It was a dark time for the South African automotive industry. Looking internally and at our own data within AutoTrader, no one could have predicted what was going to come next. I recall sitting one Saturday morning, just after lockdown, thinking about the scenario and the place we found ourselves. Thinking to myself, nobody can go to work. All car dealerships are closed. How on earth is this industry going to survive? And it struck me that if we're not active as a business in the automotive industry, as the market leader, we're not going to do the industry a service. So I got on the phone to a couple of industry leaders and asked, what are we doing about this? Are we lobbying to government? And fortunately, about 4 to 8 weeks later, the automotive industry began to trade. And that wasn't only as a result of AutoTrader. That was as a result of a collaborative effort from all stakeholders lobbying to our government. So then what happened? There was a radical shift in the mind of the consumer. And it happened almost immediately because the low point in terms of website traffic and conversion on AutoTrader wasn't during lockdown. It was on the day of lockdown, or should I say the day before lockdown, the 26th of March. Where were you on the 26th of March? Our single day traffic on that day decreased by 45%, and we can only assume people were out panic buying. So consumer search for cars started to rise the very next day, resulting in what we now look back on as more than a 50% growth in our platform year on year. Consumers are incredibly resilient. A few other things that we saw is consumers became insomniacs. We were seeing searches happen between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning. And before you think that those searches occurred at 11 to 12 o'clock in the evening, 78% increase in searches between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. What were people doing searching for cars between 1 and 2 in the morning? Even to this day, consumer behavior has changed because searches at midnight now exceed searches at 9 a.m. on an average day. During the pandemic, we also saw a buy-down trend. We saw the 50,000 car category and below increase by approximately 15%. And the 100,000 car category and below increased by 29%, and so on and so forth. But that's all now normalized, and we're seeing buying up trends in the market, not necessarily buying down trends. So the consumers have bounced back. Another interesting fact is that we saw a tenfold increase in searches for armored vehicles as we entered lockdown level 2 and level 1. So I suppose we can all agree, and it's important to note, that this change was happening anyway. While COVID-19 was the focus of 2020, it would be wise of us as an industry to take an even bigger step back and accept that this change was happening anyway. And arguably, 2020 is making it happen even faster than it ever has. And the pace at which digital transformation is happening now changes this little curve that we all know so well, called the innovation curve, to a curve that potentially looks like this. And we're seeing it happen before our eyes. And I've just used some of AutoTrader's data to help prove that theory. It's compressed the innovation curve and it's put us into a little bit of a roller coaster. And many businesses and many people don't know what to make of the future. And I'd like to propose a couple of ideas that we used in building our platform, if that's okay with you. There are two types of businesses that I see from my perspective. The first type of business is a business that is a producer. It's a producer of products, cars, commodities, cell phones, anything you can think of that is in the physical world. And then there's platforms. And rarely, but ever so often, there's a combination of both of them. I'm going to give you the example of a business that is both a producer as well as a platform. So let's focus on producers for a second. Producer is the first type of business that exists, and it's existed for hundreds of years, producing cars, cell phones, the physical world products that we all know. Value creation, typically in a producing business, comes from within the company. The company produces a product and then puts it out to the world, and revenue growth comes from selling those products that are produced. So we don't really need to spend too much time on the producing type business. We all know what they're about. So let's spend some time on the next category, and that is the platform type business. Now, the difference between a producer and a platform business is that value creation partly happens outside the company. This is how Instagram trumped Snapchat. Now, while Snapchat is also a platform business, they use their platform benefits to their advantage by reducing the number of clicks it took to get to putting content out to the world. Spotify continually learns from the songs people listen to and then suggests songs to the rest of the users on the platform. Facebook is very similar. Facebook gives you suggestions. Your newsfeed is very different to my newsfeed. That is one of the benefits of a platform business, is that you learn from your users. And you also learn from the suppliers of the content that get produced. And in Facebook's case, they are trying to turn their users into producers. And this is what produces the value. Now, AutoTrader was a producer. Before 2017, we were still a magazine business. As a matter of fact, up until 2008, we were a fully fledged magazine business. We sold a physical product. We didn't make most of our revenue out of the sale of that physical product, but we still sold a physical product. Our print and distribution volumes were unmatched and very, very hard to copy because we were first mover way back in 1992. We sold approximately 120,000 magazines and distributed 200,000 magazines in order to make that a reality. But we had limited network effects. And I want you to pause on that word network effects for a second because it can become very complicated. Platforms have the benefit of network effects. And what does that mean? Is that platforms benefit from the users on the platform being connected to each other. One user added to a platform benefits the other users on that platform. I'll give you an example. If we make, as a business, our search and clicks available to the consumer on a car, that gives that user that comes to the platform next a benefit to see how popular that car is and can then very quickly make a decision around whether the popularity of that car means they have to rush to the dealership or whether they can continue browsing and looking. Who else does this? Google does it. When you click on something, it tells Google that what you're clicking on is relevant, and it serves that up to other users. And that's, in a nutshell, in a very high level, the benefit of network effects on a platform. So we've become a platform. AutoTrader is now a platform fully fledged from about 2017. We started building our platform in and around 2007, 2008. And we are what's called a two-sided marketplace platform, which connects the buyers and sellers of vehicles. So we have two sides to our network. We've got the user side, or the consumer side, and we have the supply side, or the units on our platform, or the dealers that put those units on our platform. So there are many types of platform examples. Google is a platform that connects searchers for information with the information providers. So you've got to ask yourself the question, how do you leverage this effect? And we've spent the last decade understanding how to leverage this effect. But there's something else that's unique about platforms and the network effects that platforms benefit from. And that is they become incredibly valuable. The value of these platforms versus the producer is starkly different, as you can see on the screen. Why is it that Uber is valued more highly than BMW? Many people think that this is a bubble. How can a business that doesn't produce a physical product be so valuable? And I'm going to try and take you through some of the reasons why. And to understand that it's not a bubble, we need to first understand the difference between viral effects and network effects. Viral effects are effectively short-lived. They travel in one direction, and when interacted with, it's over. Have you ever seen a viral video? Do you watch it twice? Maybe. 3 times? Maybe. But do you watch it 10 or 11 or 12 times? Only if it's really, really good. Whereas network effects are very different. And herein lies the power of building a platform. And it usually means that there's a type of digital connection, an application or service that you or your customers can engage with and engage with each other. And digital transformation means the building of network effects and the building of a platform. So I'd like to suggest 4 key competitive advantages that include network effects. Because your world at the moment would look like this. Historically, we would be able to be successful by driving vertical integration. How do we drive vertical integration? You buy up the value chain. Many businesses do it. It's a good idea. It's a way to lower cost of your produced product. Building a brand. Building a brand is very important, and we're going to get to that in a little bit more detail a little bit later on. Getting to scale, the Model T Ford. So Henry Ford found a way to bring a very expensive product to market and use the effects of scale by reducing the cost of production of that particular product. But then there's network effects. And if we can harness network effects on a platform, it will be our biggest competitive advantage, much bigger than the other 3. And AutoTrader has lived in this world.